at DeWittDailyNews.com. They're also heard every hour on the station that's your easy choice, 95.9 FM WEZC. And to read the latest local news on your electronic device, including tablets, iPhones, and smartphones, go to DeWittDailyNews.com. DeWitt County's #1 source for local news is on the air, online, 24 hours a day.
Your friend in Central Illinois. WHOW.
Top of the morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. My guest in studio this morning, Reagan Tibbs, U of I Extension in Logan, Menard, and Sangamon counties. He is a commercial ag educator with the extension. Good to see you, Reagan. How are you?
Good, Seth. How are you doing?
I'm well. Thanks for asking. Thanks for making time for us as always. And we're coming up on the spring season, Reagan.
Yes,
and
we certainly are.
we're talking about applicators, we're talking about planting and all those things, but I think top of mind right now for a lot of guys is probably the drought and the severity of it, and the variance of the severity.
Yeah, absolutely. We've it's been a while since we've had a really good rain. We had one a few weeks ago, and that brought some relief in terms of drought. But yeah, a lot of the state, especially here in the central part where a lot of our agricultural production is, it's certainly dealing with a lot of drought conditions. So hopefully as we actually get into spring, we actually start seeing some more. I know there's some rain in the forecast today, so hopefully we get some. But yeah, definitely we need some more rain.
Yep. I talked to the weather service yesterday, and all the outlooks seem to indicate rain in the long-term forecast. So we'll hopefully get some of that. And, I guess, Reagan, when you think about drought and you think about the planning, the applicator season and the planting season, what comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I think it's just keeping in mind of our practices. We've seen that, we may have gotten, how many inches of rain over the last few weeks, which is great and does provide some relief. But all that water has either sunk down very bottom into our water table or it's evaporated as soon as it hits the ground. And so one thing you have to keep in mind is when we're going out there in the field is preventing dust storms and erosion. Mechanical work on the fields is necessary at some times, but it does increase our likelihoods of soil erosion. Our topsoil is one of the best tools that we have, one of the best resources we have in this part of the state, in this part of the country. And so we have to protect that as much as possible. And so we have to think about with these dry conditions, and if we're not seeing any other rain in the forecast, how can we not only adjust our planting schedules to meet that, but also adjust our practices to ensure we can keep that topsoil there at our fields and make sure those nutrients are available for the growing season.
Yeah, definitely. Very good. Very good. And like we said, I wonder if with that kind of wet outlook for the spring, does it impact, planting timelines and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it certainly could. I haven't looked at the long-term forecast and I haven't reached out to them to talk about that yet, but certainly it can. Obviously none of us have a crystal ball where we can predict what the weather's going to do. But definitely we need to think about if there is long-term rain in the forecast, okay, does that mean we can get the crop a little bit earlier and has that rain to help jumpstart? Or we could have to delay our planting a little bit, which means we might get new seeds and have to worry about inputs and all those other types of things. So definitely our long-term weather outlook is going to impact how we move forward the planting season this year.
And with that said, do guys want to get the crop in the ground before all this rain comes? Like if we're looking at a stretch of 5 to 7 days where there's rain in the forecast, are they going to want to put it in before that, or are they going to wait?
Well, they will definitely. We definitely want to have some rain shortly after we plant that seed, right? We want to get that germination process started, and water is a really important part of that. But we don't want to have so much that it basically just floods and drowns that seed. Exactly. So we want to get the seed in the ground. We want to get it that good head start. But if it's going to be raining for a really, really long time, especially if it's a long sustained rain, that could have some negative impacts, which cause us going to replant or impact our stand count. So it's kind of a guessing game. Obviously, like I said, we don't know the forecast until almost right as soon as it happens. But it definitely is going to impact how we, again, do we go a little bit earlier? Do we go a little bit later? Because again, you can't go right as soon as the rain is done. It's muddy, and that isn't the best of situations. So it's about letting that soil soak in that water as much as possible and retain it, and then getting the seed in shortly after.
What about the inputs and applicators, and trying to work around rain with those?
Yeah. I talked to some fertilizer people and they're like, yeah, we just kind of go whenever we hear it's go time. Obviously there are different conditions and requirements for that. From the way it sounds, most of our producers in this area have kind of got their inputs figured out, which is a good thing given the current conditions of the world. I know you and I are going to talk about that here in a second. But yeah, I mean, they're kind of at the whim of the planters. Whenever these producers are going in the field, then they need to be right there ready to go to be along with them.
Very good. Anything else on kind of the drought and how it's impacting ag right now, Reagan?
Yeah, I mean, just like I said, keep in mind our production practices, make sure we're not, contributing to that erosion anymore, and protecting our soil so that way it's there for future generations.
Very nice. Reagan Tibbs, again, he is a commercial ag educator, U of I Extension in Logan, Menard, and Sangamon County's in studio with us here for this morning. And let's talk input prices. What are we looking at right now, Reagan?
Yeah, it's been a pretty interesting few weeks. Obviously, with the current ongoing conflict in Iran, and then the closing of the Strait of Hormuz, that has caused a lot of our input prices, not just in agriculture, but in a lot of other sectors of our economy, to really take a hit.
Gas prices are insane right now.
Yeah, gas prices, anything that's based off of oil is going to be expensive. But it's not just, people think about that region of the world, the Middle East, and yes, we do get a lot of oil from that region, but fertilizers is another big thing that we get from that part of the world.
Really?
Yep, fertilizers are. And so with the Strait of Hormuz being closed, not only is it limiting the amount of oil products that can move through that from that region, it's also fertilizers. And so we're trying to find, I think the administration announced the other day, they're trying to get a deal organized with Morocco to get some fertilizers in from there, and try to find any other sources of fertilizers and other key inputs that we need, so that we can continue to have that supply available, again, not just for agricultural production, but for other parts of our economy.
So is it possible to whatever is in that region, and you'll have to forgive me, my
Sure.
knowledge of applicators is not good.
That's okay.
But like, do we have the capability to make those things in America, or produce those things in America?
We do, to an extent. Yeah, we do produce some of the fertilizers that we have. For example, phosphorus down in Florida, there's a region called the Bone Valley, where we do produce some phosphorus that then gets moved up by rail and by other means up to this part of the world, where it gets finished out and turned into full-on fertilizer. But again, our domestic capability is not going to be, our domestic need far exceeds what our domestic production needs. So that's why we have to import a lot of these products. And it's all about economics as well. It's oftentimes cheaper and more efficient to produce those products in countries like Morocco, or in Russia, Ukraine, or even in the Middle East, where the resources are more abundant in that region. It's cheaper, it's more economically efficient to produce it there, and then bring it here to the United States.
You bring up a good point. The conflict in Ukraine, on top of the conflict in Iran, really kind of putting it to the farmers right now.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was in grad school, when the conflict in Ukraine started, I remember seeing the graph of fertilizer prices just spiking instantly after that invasion. It stayed there for a little bit. They've come back down a little bit since then, but they're still really high. And I haven't seen a graph lately, but I bet now with this current ongoing conflict, that chart is going back up again, just like we saw in 2022, I think it was when that started.
For sure. But, again, producers, farmers, they got to get that crop in the ground. They don't have a choice. That's their livelihood.
Exactly.
So
we got to feed the whole nation. We got to feed the world. So we desperately need those inputs. And so, like I said, most producers I've talked to, they've got their inputs kind of figured out that they need, which is a good thing. But for those that might need some extra or haven't got it figured out, it's definitely going to be an interesting conversation to have with not just their fertilizer dealer or whoever they get their products from, but just when they crunch the numbers, it's going to be a pretty tough conversation to have.
how about trying to find ways to, mitigate or soften the blow of these high prices elsewhere in your operation?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, we've come from a period from, let's say, kind of that immediate post-COVID era of higher commodity prices, and our input prices were a lot more stable. So we enjoyed a long period of, great financial positions. We were able to get some mechanics or some machinery upgrades on our operations, maybe spend a little bit more on some of those inputs. Our marketing decisions were a lot easier. Now it's a lot more difficult with our commodity prices not being anywhere near they were a few years ago, but our input prices have continued to increase and have remained high. And then our machinery expenses are going up. A lot of our other expenses that we have on our balance sheets are going up. So it's really important to have those discussions about, okay, what can we do to try and mitigate? On the nutrient side, can we adopt maybe a cover crop, or do we know a local, a livestock producer that might be willing to help us out with some manure to supply some extra nutrients? So I'll think about those types of ways that we can not necessarily fully reduce our costs, but reduce that cost burden a little bit to make our operations more profitable this year.
I can't remember. Might have been Farm Progress, one of the events I was at last year, asking guys, if there was at all, or maybe it was I know what it was. It was harvest reports.
Okay.
I was asking guys about the next year,
Sure.
and I was asking if the input prices, would they make any drastic decisions, like just not plant certain crops or not apply certain applicators, right?
Sure.
Do you think that's an option for guys this year?
I think it's something that some may have had to consider. Again, those are really tough conversations to have, and they have to be done on a case by case basis. But certainly, I could see those conversations happening, and I think again that's where we think about, okay, if I'm not able to put on as much nitrogen or as much phosphorus this year, okay, can I adopt a cover crop that will keep what's there in the soil, keep that in there, and even help build nitrogen in some cases with certain cover crops? Or can we adopt some of those practices that will help, that may not in the immediate term help that, but in the long run will work out for us and try to help out that financial position a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. There's a lot that goes into it, and
Absolutely.
And I venture a guess we are at a point, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, we're probably at a point where most producers, they've set their plans for the year, and they're, to alter those is probably not an option yet, or are we?
To a degree, I think most of the decisions now are going to be in terms of when are we actually getting in the field? When are we actually going to be able to get the seeds in the ground? When are we going to make those input, apply those fertilizers, whatever their products? Like I've been saying, the producers I've talked to and what I've kind of been hearing is that most producers have what they need for the year, so they're good to go. They're set on that. But it's, again, those last case scenarios. Do we need to have a replant? Do we need to add in a little bit extra fertilizer later on in the year, particularly this summer? So those are definitely conversations that need to be had. But like you said, most producers do kind of have that figured out. It's right now, it's just the timing aspect. When is it actually going to happen?
Very good. Reagan, can folks talk to you about their plans and maybe some of I know you mentioned you've been at the U of I a couple of times the last month or so. Can they talk to you about maybe some of the research that they've seen or some of the numbers that are out there?
Absolutely. They're more than happy to call our office there in Lincoln, or they can go to our website, extension.illinois.edu/LMS.
Very nice. Again, Reagan Tibbs, Extension. He is a commercial ag educator with the University of Illinois Extension. Our guest in studio this morning. More to come with Reagan coming up on the WHOW Morning Show.
WHOW.
Let's check the markets now on the RFD Radio Network. I'm Jim Taylor. Two-sided trade with corn, beans, and Chicago wheat. Make corn down 2 3/4, 464.5. July corn down 2 1/4, 475.5. And new crop December 492.5, down 3/4. May beans up to 1173 3/4. July beans up 1 1/2, 1189 1/4. New crop November 1152 3/4, up 2 3/4. May wheat unchanged, 597 3/4. May KC wheat is up 2 3/4, 620.5. May bean meal 318.90, down 90 cents. May bean oil 67.88, up 78 cents. Livestock trade, April live cattle 234.25, down 17 cents. March feeders up $1.37, 363.25. May lean hogs 95.65, up a dime. Energy market, June Brent crude oil up $3.54, $100.80. RFD Radio Network.
This is Seth Lawrence, News and Program Director for WHOW and WEZC. We take pride in being Clinton and Central Illinois' local radio stations each and every day, 7 days a week. What does local news mean? Here's a sample.
This year, we had 18 grants submitted, and we supported those with $14,402.
I received a call from a local realtor who has confirmed that there's some Clinton residents that have moved out of the town because of the housing crisis.
We're looking at $15,000 to $17,500 in grants this cycle. And again, those go to small business. They're small business grants.
You hear the local people that make the news every day, 7 days a week on the big 1520 AM, 92.3 FM, and 106.5 FM WHOW, and on your easy choice for soft hits, 95.9 FM WEZC.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Once again, a good morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. Again, Reagan Tibbs, our guest in studio today. He's a commercial ag educator with the University of Illinois Extension in Logan, Menard, and Sangamon counties. And Reagan, let's talk anhydrous application safety. What's going on here?
Yeah, so anhydrous is one of the most common nitrogen fertilizers here, not just in Illinois, but across the United States. And, while most anhydrous might have been put on back in the fall, we're going to see some anhydrous applications this spring. And again, while it's a really important fertilizer, it's one that a lot of producers use. It comes with some serious safety concerns that need to be thought about and need to be at top of mind when we're applying it. So I wrote a recent blog post about it on my blog, Farm Focus, about, kind of what the chemistry of anhydrous ammonia looks like, and then how does that affect humans when we come in contact with it, particularly at high doses.
Sure. So how do we protect ourselves in this process?
Proper PPE obviously is the most important thing. I don't know if you've ever been around like an anhydrous leak, except my dad used to apply fertilizers. And I remember one time I was riding with him, he was applying anhydrous, and my mom came to pick me up, and he had just lifted the toolbar and he had shut it off. But the moment he opened that door, I got a nice whiff of it right into the face. And when you experience something like that, it is unlike anything else. Anhydrous, without getting too chemistry nerd into it, and Lord knows I'm not a chemistry person, but what happens is it attaches itself to water. It takes one of the hydrogen atoms off of water and becomes basically like bleach. It has the same pH level as bleach at that point.
Wow.
So it really can cause a lot of damage to the skin. Our skin is 44% water. Our eyes are always constantly watery. Even when we breathe it in, our lungs are full of moisture as well.
So did you have to do anything when that happened to you?
So drink a lot of water, kind of wash my face
Flush
with
it out,
water.
yeah.
Because that's the one thing, is more water helps in that situation. And anhydrous loves water. So the more you can dilute it with water, the better. So some of the other state extension services out there that have put out some information about safety recommend, if you're in the cab, if you're in a tractor cab, keeping like a 5-gallon jug of water with you. So that way, if you do get it in your eyes or you do inhale some of it, you can kind of flush that out of your system. But also having a proper respirator too, especially if there's a serious leak of it, because when it's in its gaseous form, it's odorless, it's colorless. You oftentimes can't see it. And so having that proper respirator to protect yourself. But if you come across someone who has been exposed to it and has a serious exposure of it, not only do you need to care for that person, get them out of that area where that anhydrous is, but you immediately call 911 so they can get that proper treatment to protect themselves from it.
This is a really dumb question, probably the dumbest I'm going to ever ask. What does anhydrous do for the crop?
So it's a source of nitrogen. That's the main thing. And so when we apply it into the soil, it finds those water atoms. It finds all that water that's down in the soil. It attaches itself, and then it stays to that water. Obviously, water can move. So if we have excessive rainfall, that can move. But generally speaking, anhydrous ammonia will stay in the soil where we apply it, and then it can stay there for a long time. So that's why we utilize it.
So is it what, just keep the moisture at the top of the soil layer there?
No, not necessarily. Just wherever the water is, it becomes available. And then as the plant starts to develop its root system, because the roots will go and find water, right? And so when it finds that water, it finds those extra nitrogen molecules and will attach itself to it.
Does it do anything to the chemistry of the soil other than that?
It just adds that extra nitrogen, and then it puts off, I believe, I don't know what exactly it puts off, but it does put off another chemical that really doesn't have any negative effects. It's just when it gets exposed onto the human skin or to our eyes, it can really have some serious impacts. And another thing too is, let's say you're dropping off anhydrous tanks in the field and you're trying to hook up that equipment, you're switching out tanks basically. It's important that we stand away from it. So let's say the wind is blowing this way, stand, would that be downwind of it or upwind of it?
Upwind of it.
Upwind of it. Thank you. So that way, if and for some reason it does get released, it blows away from you, not blowing to you. And also try not to put homes or a lot of, populated areas downwind. So that way they are not getting the effects of it as well.
Sure. So you mentioned that more water kind of dilutes not the anhydrous. Does this mean that guys want to put this in when it's dry?
We kind of ideally want to put it in when there's going to be enough water, moisture in the soil will help. And that's why kind of this springtime period is really beneficial. You and I talked about, there's a lot of rain in the forecast coming up. So this is where we can see some anhydrous applications going on. I haven't seen as much of it personally, but I have seen some tanks rolling around out there. And so definitely, I think if there's more rain in the forecast coming up, we might start seeing that get put on with that rainfall.
I see. Interesting stuff. Anything else on anhydrous safety, Reagan, you want to put out there for us?
Yeah, just again, I mentioned I wrote about a blog post or wrote a post about it on my blog, Farm Focus, where it has resources on safety concerns and other things about the chemistry and how anhydrous can affect the human body. So I encourage people to look that up. They just search Farm Focus Illinois Extension on our website. They should be able to find it and read all that information.
How often are you blogging these days?
I wasn't as good about it towards the end of last year, but in the past couple months, I've added some more posts to it. I got some more topics coming up. So I try to do that every other week or every week, sometimes depending on what all's going on in the world and what topics are important. But generally every other week, there should be a post on there.
What are you thinking for some topics coming up that you want to write about?
That's a good question. I've got one working. There's a USDA put out a recent report on kind of some trends and adoption trends of some of their conservation practices through programs like CRP and EQIP. So I'm going to write a post about that. That should be coming out later this week. I've got some other things working around, especially in the policy space as well.
Policy.
One of the things is the USMCA agreement is up for renegotiation this summer.
Okay.
And so I'll kind of talk about what that process is going to look like and what could be some of the outcomes of those negotiations.
Sure. From a policy perspective and just watching kind of the political scene, I know you watch that closely. Anything that you're keeping an eye on right now, other than say the Iran and Ukraine situations?
Yeah, I mean the House introduced a new farm bill, and that's kind of moved through the process. It got approved out of committee. So now it's kind of in limbo on the House floor. I think there's discussions about it possibly being included with a larger funding package for the Iran conflict. We'll see if that actually happens. I believe the Senate Ag Committee chair yesterday, the day before, said the Senate will be working on their version of a skinny farm bill as well. So it seems like there's a lot of momentum to get some of those programs that were not included in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act this past summer to get those passed, to get those into effect, so we're not in a situation where we're having to do constant year after year renewals of those programs. So definitely that's one of the biggest things in terms of domestic ag policy that we're looking at.
How do midterms coming up impact some of these things?
Congress will take a nice big break because they've worked so hard and they deserve it. They'll take a nice big break in August to go home and to campaign and everything. And then by the time they come back in September and October, everyone's working on those big buttons. You're trying to make those big pushes. Hey, I'm doing this for the people of my district. And then come after November, when we're talking about late November and December, right before Christmas, it's usually called a lame duck session because they don't really do anything of major consequence. But that could change, especially if there are a lot of those big policy questions that haven't been solved.
You could have just stopped. They don't really do anything. But
I'm trying to be fair.
Jokes aside, Reagan.
But still, yeah, definitely, it's definitely going to be interesting how the midterms play into some of these
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Reagan, I got to let you go, man. Appreciate you coming out this morning. Good to see you as always. Reagan Tibbs, he is a commercial ag educator, U of I Extension in Logan, Menard, and Sangamon counties. Our guest in studio. Network News comes your way next on The Morning Show.
WHOW.